Hey, Connecticut, it's Johnny Flynn. It's September 17th, and we need to have a discussion about James Comey, a big one, because I have no confidence in the average Connecticut resident's understanding of what Comey is and has done, okay? So, if you go on Wikipedia, you can pull up this 35-page article. I can put it on the screen. It may not help you. Here I go. I'm going to show you how to research on him. The last numerous pages, there are over 200 articles listed here. And exactly what happens. Trump denies having Comey tapes, but won't deny the recordings exist. Jeffrey Toobin goes off on Trump for firing Comey. Okay, let's get back to Comey. Comey ran the FBI in Connecticut. What happened? It's important. Most people don't even realize that he was a Republican. So we have the never Trumpers and the Trump fans, and we have the far left liberals fighting with the old-time Democrats. And what they needed to do with the FBI was show that they had a nonpartisan support for the FBI. When Comey went down to be FBI head, Blumenthal praised him, okay? The Senate voted 93-1 to confirm James Comey. So when you look, let me take myself off the screen for a moment here. If you look at this article and go down the pages, okay, you will see that Blumenthal is now criticizing Comey for, hey, the USA Gymnastics fraud investigation debacle, all the fraud investigation debacles leading up to the present situation. And now Blumenthal is throwing Biden under the bus for Afghanistan. Why? He's trying to do damage control for the DNC in Connecticut. But keep in mind this, and I'm going to go through this article in depth, if you'll allow me. So, when Comey started, he worked for the New York prosecutor's office. But Comey, for example, from 2010 to 2014 worked for Bridgewater hedge fund, which is run by Dalio, Lamont's buddy. You understand? Why would the Democrats choose a Republican to fill an FBI chairman position? I'll tell you why. Because they knew, based on his history, which is right here in my hand, that he wasn't a Republican at all, okay? No values, nothing. He was Catholic, now he's Methodist. Okay, that's part of it, not much. When you look at the facts and you go through his history from start to finish, for 2 years, he was a senior vice president of Lockheed Martin. Okay. He worked for the Southern District of New York from 2002 to 2003, and he became Deputy Attorney General from December 2003 to 2005 in Connecticut. He became the 7th Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation from 2013 to 2017. Now, what did he do at Bridgewater, a hedge fund? He got paid $14 million. I think he got a $3 million signing bonus to work for the people who are funding Jim Himes, Bank America. So keep in mind, James Comey was the one who investigated Martha Stewart, okay? James Comey is the one who refused to investigate Bank America Fleet Bank Boston, U.S. Clearing, and Fleet Securities, which is Jim Himes's largest donor. Keep in mind here, Himes had FBI oversight of Comey. Comey was never prosecuted. Himes had oversight of OxyContin, never prosecuted. John Brennan, never prosecuted. Clapper, never prosecuted. What's going on here, folks? We have RINOs, like the man in the picture. There's the picture. And when you look at the articles, one after the next, here he is, criticizing Nasser at the gymnastics, handling, and here's
Thank you,
Blumenthal's
Director Comey, for your excellent work and your great
praising
service to our country.
Comey
Thank you to your family,
in 2015.
And most especially to your wife, Patrice, who has done so much for the children of Connecticut and now for others around our country. I've just come from...
In other
Thank
words,
you, Mr. Chairman, for that correction.
Mr. Blumenthal likes to have his cake and eat it too. Praising. Then once he's found out to be a fraud, and Comey leaked all types of information through a third party in the Trump investigation. Now, Himes was maintaining for years that Trump colluded with the Russians when, in fact, Hillary colluded with the Russians. Blumenthal brought Comey down to Washington to become FBI head, to falsify the Mueller report, to falsify the Benghazi, to falsify the approval of Rostec, to falsify the State Department information, and keep in mind, Himes all along, NSA oversight, FBI oversight, CIA oversight of Brennan, for God's sake, Clapper, for God's sake, and OxyContin. Now, Blumenthal took a bribe on OxyContin, and so did Himes. So when you look, Oxy wasn't prosecuted. And continue on. There's more in this file than any one person can stomach in one day. But I will tell you, on June 14th, 2018, DOJ Inspector Michael Horowitz released a report on the FBI's handling of the Clinton email investigation and criticized Comey's actions during the 2016 election. President Trump fired Comey on May 9th, 2017. Later that month, Comey arranged for a friend to leak private memos written after a February 14th, 2017 meeting with President Trump. When you think about it, the head of the FBI should not be leaking, should not be unmasking people. 52 FBI agents working for Comey leaked critical data on agents, which is illegal. Why wasn't he prosecuted? Why is Blumenthal holding hearings and not insisting on the prosecution of Comey? Why is Himes not insisting on the prosecution of Comey? After all, he is a Republican, but he's working on their team. So when you look at what Dalio is doing with Lamont's office, you can go through the pension fund money and the fact that Lamont's wife is managing pension money of Connecticut offshore without any ethics violations because they don't have any reporting function. It's not a ethical relationship to have in the first place. And why pay fees to the governor's wife for managing the government's mismanagement of the pension? So I don't understand. But this entire file goes through his early life. He was on the Whitewater Commission. There's securities fraud investigations he handled, and then ones he refused to handle. When you look at what cases he actually handled and what he did at the State Department, he basically was in charge of reports about waterboarding, about the UN's involvement in torture. This entire document on January 12, 2017, the United States Department of Justice, Office of Inspector General, announced a formal investigation into whether the FBI followed proper procedure in its investigation of Clinton and whether improper considerations were made by FBI personnel. Hold on a second. The FBI falsified statements on the FISA warrants, which Himes has oversight of. Blumenthal rewrote the FISA rules in 2013 with 18 fellow Democrats. So they had a plan putting Comey in charge, knowing his background with Dalio and his connections to people like Lamont in Connecticut, that he would frame a sitting president. From day one, Blumenthal and many other Democrats said, impeach the mother effer. Do you recall that? Right out of the gate. So, what happened? Flynn was framed, knowing he had not committed a felony. They prosecuted him for, or alleged that he did crimes worse than he did, so he would plead to a lesser charge. That's what these guys do. That's what Connecticut does. That's what the current judicial system is doing. And if you look at the upcoming, in 10 days, there's a vote about the Inspector General of Connecticut being formed a 4-body person organization. If you look at what's happening, okay, since the state's attorney is falsifying evidence, such as the Barrier murder, where the autopsy's falsified and tasers were used, the reports all say no tasers were used. They covered it up, folks. So when you look at how they play the game, Comey's original draft of the exoneration statement of Clinton had committed gross negligence, which is a crime. However, the language was later changed to extreme carelessness, making it not a crime. So Comey changed his reports to appease the Blumenthals, Himes, and Murphys of Connecticut. This is treason, folks. Falsifying reports to justify the outcome that you're seeking. Falsifying statements on warrants of FISA to get surveillance. If you go through this document, on March, the testimony before the House Intelligence Committee, Comey confirmed that the FBI had been investigating possible combination between a Trump campaign and Russia. You know what actually happened? Congressman Jim Himes refuted. Comey refuted the president's Trump wiretapping allegations. I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. Excuse me. This reeks because Comey was on the Intelligence Committee, on the review process, where he commented about the torture that was taking place within the Bush administration. So we understand what's happening here and the way it affects. Here we go. U.S. Representative Chris Stewart, Republican, Utah, asked Comey in the hearing. Mr. Clapper then went on to say that, to his knowledge, there was no evidence of collusion between members of the Trump campaign and the Russians. That's Clapper, Okay? What did Comey say? The exact opposite. We did not conclude any evidence in our report. When we saw our report, that is NSA, FBI, CIA, with my office, the Director of National Intelligence said there is no evidence of any of that in our report. Comey responded, I think he's right about characterizing the report, which you have all read. So he changed his tune then. Basically, Comey changes his tune all the time, having his cake and eating it too, just like Blumenthal. So birds of a feather stick together, and they need to be tarred and feathered, because Comey committed treason as the head of FBI, and there are hundreds of thousands of felonies in Connecticut that have not been prosecuted because Comey didn't do his job. So all the praise Blumenthal gave him in the beginning, he is now being thrown under the bus just like Biden. So we are stuck with a destroyed FBI, compromised NSA, and it's leading to the Rostec disaster, the container ship industry problem, and the shipping problem. Those ships, those 56 ships offshore in California are suspected of having K-container nukes. In other words, truck bodies with Russian weaponry, and there's no getting around this. They can't bring these ships into the United States where they could be launched. We need to seriously get to the bottom of the Russian collusion, because what the Russian collusion gets back to is Hillary Clinton. And that was protected by James Comey. That was protected by Jim Himes. Look at what Jim Himes is doing and figure out how to fix the Comey problem. Now let's get back to Dalio. Comey worked for the largest hedge fund in the United States, and they have ties to what Lamont is doing with his executive power right now. So, they're taking away your rights. Comey took away your gun rights in Connecticut by limiting law-abiding citizens and not limiting any criminal activity. Comey, running the FBI, left the border open. Folks, how more specific can you be? We should have criminalized fentanyl 10 years ago. Yeah, why isn't it criminalized? Because the left wants us to keep it as a product like heroin to infect our youth as a trafficking tool. We are now legalizing prostitution in Connecticut, which will not help women. We had a problem with Comey from 2006 to 2016. Why? Because not a single human trafficker was prosecuted during his control of the FBI in Connecticut. Not one. Okay? 2006 to 2016, 0 prosecutions, 400 arrests. But if you look at Blumenthal's involvement in that, it's horrific. So I don't want to go longer than 18 minutes. I doubt anyone's going to watch the connection between Comey and Blumenthal, but his usefulness is over and the corruption remains. The systems they set up, you can go and watch any hearing.
I'm here to talk about our fellow Americans in Puerto Rico.
You can watch.
Even as the Northeast is gripped by a storm of impressive.
Look at any one of these things.
Effective enforcement of the law, I rise today as well on a related topic, which is the quality of our judiciary. Again, our laws are only as effective as the judges who implement them. And here I rise with regret, because the administration is attempting
to radically
reshape our judiciary to remake the bench in the image of a...
He's criticizing the FBI investigation on behalf of Blasey Ford when it came to the judge nomination of Kavanaugh. It's remarkable for him to flip-flop saying, oh, Kavanaugh was a bad pick. The reason why Blumenthal is picking at the Blasey Ford FBI investigation is because he is also going to allege that the Kavanaugh appointment by the and the FBI investigation of Kavanaugh was also botched. So now Blumenthal is so afraid of the Democrats losing control in Connecticut that he's willing to flip-flop and use Comey's bad history to defend his own actions. In other words, it wasn't me, it was Comey. When in fact, he appointed him, and so did 92 other senators. So it's remarkable that Comey, who is no longer Republican, okay, he left the Republican Party, was never a Republican all along, and that Dalio is empowering them, purchasing them to be used when in fact they have to keep up appearances of being nonpartisan. So look at the Adam Kinzingers of the world. Look at the 16 Republicans that voted Blackburn for the impeachment of Trump, and figure out who the RINOs are in Connecticut that we cannot support. That's the point I want to make. There are very powerful RINOs in Connecticut that you need to call out and separate from the flock, because they are being bought by Dalio to damage and in damage control of the richest people in the country, of which Blumenthal is one of them. You understand? Okay, sorry. It's taken a long time. I'm at 22 minutes, but if you don't understand what the Comey connection is, Comey is a bad apple. And I thank you very much for listening. I'm sure some people will.